Aloha, everyone. Welcome to Advent of Divine Justice. We are on part 7, and we're going to first start off with our prayer. Thank you so much.
ربنا وفقنا على معرفت أمرك العظيم و تخلق بخلقك الكريم و سلوک في منهجك القويم بفضلك القديم و جودك العميم إنك أنت العليم إنك أنت الرحمن الرحیم بنده آستانش شوقی.
Thank you very much. Okay. So dear friends, welcome. Really good to see everyone. It really brings me great joy to see everyone tonight.
Aloha, everyone.
Aloha. So tonight we are going to cover paragraphs 17 and 18. And if you're reading from your Advent of Divine Justice book, in this small one, we are on page 12. If you're reading from the bigger one, we are on page 7. Okay, just so everyone can be following along. So just to recap, before we get into our readings, in our last paragraph, paragraph 16, as you all recall, the beloved guardian had now been talking about a community negligible in its numerical strength. Do you all recall this? He was going through all the problems that the American Baha'i community was facing, such as language, distance from the epicenter of the faith, distance from where the cradle of the faith was, and then beset with problems of defections that were quite, in the words of the beloved guardian, great and enormous tests on this community that was just a fledgling, nascent, infant community. So now we are going to start on paragraph 17. I'll read paragraph 17 because it's this, I believe, the second longest paragraph in the Advent of Divine Justice. And then we have Zamruhi John right there will be reading paragraph 18, okay? And then we'll get into our session for today, okay? Let me minimize my little screen over here. Oh, and if you are not talking, as always, this is cordial. If you're not talking, silence yourselves so there's no background feed noise. Also, this is your class as always, so don't hesitate if you have a question or comment.
Could you make the screen bigger?
Yes, of course I am. Thank you, Don.
And no side slides either, if you don't mind.
No, it's going.
Excellent, thank you.
There we go. Okay, so the topics that will be addressed in this session, this is paragraph 17 and 18, is building a framework for nascent institutions, okay? And the construction of the Baha'i house of worship and securing the allegiance of royalty. So this is topics that will be coming up in paragraph 17 and 18, as well as the establishment of Baha'i schools and other major achievements. Okay, so these are the topics that we'll be addressing in our slides. So let's, without any further ado, let's read this. What other community, it can confidently be asked, has been instrumental in fixing the pattern and in imparting the original impulse to those administrative institutions that constitute the vanguard of the world order of Baha'u'llah? What other community has been capable of demonstrating with such consistency the resourcefulness, the discipline, the iron determination, the zeal and perseverance, the devotion and fidelity so indispensable to the erection and the continued extension of the framework within which those nascent institutions can alone multiply and mature? What other community has proved itself to be fired by so noble a vision or willing to rise to such heights of self-sacrifice, or ready to achieve so great a measure of solidarity as to be able to raise in so short a time and in the course of such crucial years an edifice that can well deserve to be regarded as the greatest contribution ever made by the West to the cause of Baha'u'llah? What other community can justifiably lay claim to have succeeded through the unsupported efforts of one of its humble members in securing the spontaneous allegiance of royalty to its cause, and in winning such marvelous and written testimonies to its truth? What other community has shown the foresight, the organizing ability, the enthusiastic eagerness that have been responsible for the establishment and multiplication throughout its territory of those initial schools which, as time goes by, will, on the one hand, evolve into powerful centers of Baha'i learning, and on the other, provide a fertile recruiting ground for the enrichment and consolidation of its teaching force? What other community has produced pioneers combining to such a degree the essential qualities of audacity, of consecration, of tenacity, of self-renunciation and unstinted devotion that have prompted them to abandon their homes and forsake their all and scatter over the surface of the globe and hoist in its uttermost corners the triumphant banner of Baha'u'llah? Who else but the members of this community have won the eternal distinction of being the first to raise the call of Ya Baha'u'llah Pa in such highly important and widely scattered centers and territories as the hearts of both the British and French empires, Germany, the Far East, the Balkan states, the Scandinavian countries, Latin America, the islands of the Pacific, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, and now more recently, the Baltic states? Who else but those same pioneers have shown themselves ready to undertake the labor, to exercise the patience, and to provide the funds required to the translation and publication in no less than 40 languages of their sacred literature, the dissemination of which is an essential prerequisite to any effectively organized campaign of teaching? What other community can lay claim to have had a decisive share in the worldwide efforts that have been exerted for the safeguarding and the extension of the immediate surroundings of its holy shrines, as well as for the preliminary acquisition of the future sites of its international institutions at its world center? What other community can, to its eternal credit, claim to have been the first to frame its national and local constitutions, thereby laying down the fundamental lines of the twin charters designed to regulate the activities, define the functions, and safeguard the rights of its institutions? What other community can boast of having simultaneously acquired and legally secured the basis of its national endowments, thus paving the way for a similar action on the part of its local communities? What other community has achieved the supreme distinction of having obtained, long before any of its sister communities had envisaged such a possibility, the necessary documents assuring the recognition by both the federal and state authorities of its spiritual assemblies and national endowments? And finally, what other community has had the privilege and been granted the means to succor the needy, to plead the cause of the downtrodden, and to intervene so energetically for the safeguarding of Baha'i edifices and institutions in countries such as Persia, Egypt, Iraq, Russia, and Germany, where at various times its fellow believers have had to suffer the rigors of both religious and racial persecution.
Okay, so John, I just want to make sure you're recording.
Yes.
Okay, great. Such a matchless and brilliant record of service, extending over a period of well nigh 20 years, and so closely interwoven with the interests and fortunes of such a large section of the worldwide Baha'i community, deserves to rank as a memorable chapter in the history of the formative period of the faith of Baha'u'llah. Reinforced and enriched as it is by the memory of the American believers' earlier achievements, such a record is in itself convincing testimony to their ability to befittingly shoulder the responsibilities which any task may impose upon them in the future. To overrate the significance of these manifold services would be well nigh impossible. To appraise correctly their value and dilate on their merits and immediate consequences is a task which only a future Baha'i historian can properly discharge. I can only for the present place on record my profound conviction that a community capable of showing forth such deeds, of evincing such a spirit, of rising to such heights, cannot but be already possessed of such potentialities as will enable it to vindicate in the fullness of time its right to be acclaimed as the chief creator and champion of the world order of Baha'u'llah.
Beautiful, very well read. Thank you, Zemrujan.
Thank you.
So that was, as you saw in paragraph 17, let's see that once more, 688 words long. So this is one of, I believe it's the second longest paragraph in the Advent of Divine Justice. This is where the beloved guardian is highlighting the matchless record of the North American Baha'i community. What other community gives you such excitement as you read it? What other community? The beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi, throughout paragraph 17, is spelling out some of the major achievements of the North American community over the previous 20 years, as you recall. So after the passing of His Holiness Abdul Baha in 1921, all the way up to the first 7-year plan, 1937, there was a period of abeyance. And so this was a period of development of the communities, the development of the friends, capacities. It was really a period such as that. So this was a period that the friends' capacities were being built. And this was, so he addressed 11 rhetorical questions in this paragraph 17. What other community? He reiterates in paragraph 18 his conviction, this is the beloved guardian, his conviction that a community capable of showing forth such deeds, of evincing such a spirit, of rising to such heights already has the potential to be eventually what? The chief creator and champion of the world order of Baha'i. So chief creator and champion of the world order of Baha'i. And what I love that the beloved guardian says in paragraph 18 that Sam Reed just read to us was, let me get to it, sorry, was where the beloved guardian says, it would be well nigh impossible. It says, it starts with, to overrate the significance of these manifold services. You see it's right in the middle. To overrate the significance of these manifold services would be well nigh impossible. So really, these are such stellar. We're going to go through one after another, these incredible accomplishments that the early American believers achieved during this period. Okay, so let us get into our major key points, as we always do. And let's hear from Don. You have the floor, Don. So let's go through these ones. You are muted, sir.
Notice that. Sorry. Shoghi Effendi praises the resourcefulness, the discipline, the iron determination, the zeal and perseverance, the devotion and fidelity of the North American Baha'i community, so essential for building and extending the framework of the Baha'i administrative order. He also highlights the crucial role of that community in fixing the pattern and imparting the original impulse to the institutions leading the world order of Baha'u'llah. The framework of the Baha'i administrative order are the institutions that are ordained by Baha'u'llah in his writings and further explained by Abdul Baha in his will and testament.
Excellent. Very well read. Now, the first paragraph here, resourcefulness, discipline, iron determination, zeal, perseverance, devotion, fidelity. Who do you think he's addressing? Who is this letter written to? North American Baha'i community, right? And it was written to not just the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada. It was written to the generality of the North American Baha'i community, but it was primarily written to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada. So resourcefulness. So think about if you're serving on an institution such as a local spiritual assembly. Think about this. Does your institution have resourcefulness, discipline, iron determination, zeal? Are you acting with zeal in your decisions? Zeal, youthful energy, perseverance. Keep at it. If you're having devotions, firesides, are you persevering? Well, you're all persevering in this class, so so there you go. So you have some degree of perseverance. So the devotion and fidelity, each one of these, dear friends, I would write these down because they're going to come up again and again throughout the book, okay? And especially when we get to rectitude of conduct, which is one of the weapons. And does anyone remember what rectitude of conduct is? A weapon that is fighting against one of those three problems we addressed in I think it was paragraph 16. So
moral laxity.
Moral
Corruption.
corruption. Ding, ding, ding. Good job, Corruption. Corruption. Yes. Corruption. So rectitude of conduct is fighting against the corruption. And where were these problems? It was in the Baha'i community itself, which was very interesting. So, and you think those problems have gone away? No, they're still there. So that's why we should have these weapons, which we're going to be addressing in coming parts. And one of them is rectitude of conduct. Chaste and holy life was for the moral laxity. Thank you, Don. And the third one is the problem that we addressed in the prior paragraph was, what was that one?
Ingrained prejudice.
Excellent, I love it. Ingrained prejudice. And so the beloved guardian addresses the solution to the problem, which is freedom from racial prejudice. So these are the three weapons to to tackle the problems in the Baha'i community. Okay, so thank you very much, John. So we read this paragraph and we're moving on. Yes, Tesfai, do you have a question or do you have your mic on?
No, I just want to say something because, you know, the word perseverance is one of the Shoghi and Afendi's most quality words that he can mention many times in the letters and the sayings. So that is really powerful.
Yes, excellent. Very good point. Thank you, Tesfai. Perseverance. This is a quality, is one of the 4 qualities that Baha'u'llah praised highly. There's a quote on it. He says, if any act that you start, finish it to the end. Perseverance, you know? And so this is a quality that even His Holiness Baha'u'llah praises to a high degree. Okay, so we're going to get into these qualities later, but let's move on. We've got so many wonderful things that we're going to share with you today. Tesfai, would you like to read this page, please?
Major key points from paragraph 17. The birth and the primary stages in the election of the, I can't see some words over here. The erection of framework of the administrative order of the phase signaled the first epoch of the formative age. In 1902, the governing board of the Baha'is of Chicago, known as the House of Spirituality, asked Abdul Baha for permission to build a house of worship in Chicago. The royalty referred to by Shoghi Effendi is Queen Mary of Romania, and one of its humble members is a reference to Martha Ruth. A major achievement of the early North American Baha'i community was the development of Baha'i schools throughout the continent.
Thank you very much, Tesfai.
Thank
Very
you.
well read. It's not a hose of worship. It's, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how I misspelled that. Okay, excellent. So moving on. In paragraph 17, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi highlights the major contributions of the American Baha'i community in the development of the Baha'i administrative order through 2 rhetorical questions. And in these questions, he initially praises the resourcefulness, the discipline, the iron determination, the zeal and perseverance, the devotion and fidelity. You see how different words go together, and you'll see this again and again, how the beloved guardian's style is. Zeal, perseverance, devotion, fidelity. You'll see this is part of his style of writing, and it's very important which words go together, and you'll see this later if you study World Order of Baha'u'llah, study Promised Day Has Come. This is how it's part of his style. So he says, the Baha'i community is so essential for building and extending the framework and supporting the multiplication and the maturation of the Baha'i institutions. And Shoghi Effendi then highlights the crucial role of that community in fixing the pattern and imparting the original impulse to the institutions leading to the world order of Baha'u'llah. So here the beloved guardian is now working on this framework of institutions. He's working on building his world order and getting, per se, things going on in America, which is supposed to be the chief steward of the world order of Baha'u'llah. So he's praising this community for its zeal, resourcefulness, discipline, and fidelity, devotion. This community is being obedient in its early history, even though, as you recall, dear friends, all the setbacks that it was addressed in paragraph 16, and especially one of the biggest setbacks was that the chief proponent of the faith, it turned against His Holiness Abdul Baha and, created a rift. But still the friends remained staunch, steadfast, and kept working on. So let's now explore what the beloved guardian is talking about, this framework that he talks about in paragraph 17, the nature of this framework, the Baha'i administrative order. The framework of the Baha'i administrative order is the institutions ordained by His Holiness Baha'u'llah in his writings, and further expanded by Abdul Baha in his will and testament. And they consist of the local, intermediary, and universal houses of justice. So this is the terminology, local, intermediary, and universal house of justice. As you all know, they're currently entitled local spiritual assemblies, national spiritual assemblies, and the universal house of justice. But in the future, by future time, they will be called local and intermediary houses of justice. His Holiness Baha'u'llah has ordained the establishment of the elected councils of his future administrative order and referred to them as houses of justice. Okay, Bruce, are you there? Let's hear from you, Bruce. Oh, and Auntie Mafesh, you're unmuted, so please mute yourself. So,
Baha'u'llah has ordained the establishment of the elected councils of his future administrative order and referred to them as houses of justice. The context of this statement, of the statements made by Baha'u'llah, clearly shows that he is referring to two different entities, the Universal House of Justice and the local houses of justice. In the Kitabi Aqdas, Baha'u'llah ordains the establishment of the local houses of justice. The Lord has ordained that in every city a house of justice to be established, wherein shall gather counselors to the number of Baha, and should it exceeds this number, it doth not matter. The word Baha'i in his statement has a numerical value of 9 based on the Abjad numbering system. The local houses of justice are currently called local spiritual assemblies.
Excellent. Very well, Bruce.
Okay.
Good job. So here is now in the Kitab Aqdas, the most holy book in this dispensation. Baha'u'llah is talking about 2 houses of justice. One is the international body, and here is talking about local houses of justice. So local houses of justice should be established in every city. This is what Baha'u'llah says it. Every city, a house of justice should be established, wherein shall gather counselors to the number of Baha. And Baha is the number that he says in this statement has a numerical value of 9. And this is based on the Abjad numbering system. But interestingly, it says, should it exceed this number, it doth not matter. Because we know that in the future Baha'i world, there will be many friends that will be in these communities. Imagine a city of Houston with millions of people, and there will be one spiritual assembly. So it does not matter how many people in the Kitab Aqdas, how many people will be serving on the spiritual assemblies, which will in the future will be the local houses of justice. Okay?
It's not only locally, but also the House of Justice has 9, but could have more than that.
Sure. And the House of Justice will, it's up to them when they, make a calling on if they have more or not. That's up to the House of Justice. Excellent. Thank you very much, John.
Is Abjad numbering is what kind of number is that? Is it the Arabian number?
Yes, it is an Arabic numbering system. And I know Dr. Bait is with us. Do you ever want to comment on the Abjad numbering system briefly?
Yes, thank you. Every letter of the alphabet, Arabic alphabet, has the equivalence of a number. And these numbers go up. First go to 10, and then after 10, they go up by 10 at a time, so it becomes 20, 30, 40 to 100. Then after 100, it will go 1,000, and then upward. And as a result, any word, you can count the equivalent number for the alphabets in that word and come up with a number. It's not very dissimilar to what we have in English. If you look at your telephone dialing system, you will find that there are letters as well as numbers, okay? Therefore, if you want to memorize a telephone number, you can memorize the letters that go with it, okay? And vice versa. Therefore, the system is just the same. Abjad system is a very powerful system of numbering and even doing calculations. A great deal of the promises in the scriptures, historical scriptures, go by the Abjad in the Arabic alphabet, or even Hebrew language has its own equivalent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bait. I have a quick question, and Don, we're coming to you in 2 seconds, okay? My quick question to Dr. Bait is, what is the purpose? Why was it created? For what reason to have numerical 2 letters?
Now that's a little bit longer to answer.
No, quick question answer.
But for simplicity, let's say when there were prophecies in the scriptures, very often they would use a word rather than quoting, for example, the year that something was going to happen. They would quote a word. And in some cases, Baha'u'llah, when he wrote tablets to people, instead of actually naming the person that the tablet was to, Baha'u'llah uses the Abjad equivalent, and that was for protection of that person if the tablet fell in the hand of an enemy of the faith, so that that would not result in danger to the life of that believer in the early days. So that's how it's used. His Holiness the Bab uses that extensively in his writings. And sometimes also they use the equivalent of Abjad to come up with a different name for something. So for example, an individual could be called, let's say, Ali. They will find out the numerical Abjad equivalent of Ali, and then come up with a different word that has the same equivalent. Instead of Ali, for example, could become Hussein. Not that they are equivalent, I can't quote of memory. And as a result of that, this protected the friends in the early days. So part of it was for protection of the friend, as well as many other uses.
Exactly. Very, very good questions. So
may I say something?
Please, Don, you're up next.
Wikipedia says the Abjad numerals are a decimal alphabetic numeric system, alphanumeric code, in which the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet are assigned numerical values.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much. For
Don, that's basically what I said, and I talked about its uses as well. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great, great.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Moving along. We're learning a lot. I love it. Okay, so let us hear from Azim John. Are you with us? We see your profile.
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's hear it from you.
Subsequent to the provisions revealed in the Kitab-i-Aqdas, the most holy book revealed supplementary passages in a number of other tablets. In the tablet of Ishraqat, he states, "This passage, now written by the pen of glory, is accounted as part of the most holy book. The men of the God's house of justice have been charged with the affairs of the people. They, in truth, are the trustees of God among his servants and the daysprings of the authority in his countries. This is a reference to the Universal House of Justice. Baha'u'llah, Tablets of Baha'u'llah, page 128.
Excellent. Thank you, Azinjan.
Sure.
So this is in Tablet of Ishraqat, and it says that it's now part of the most holy book. Isn't that cool? So he says that this statement is in reference to the Universal House of Justice. And so that is really the place where it's talking about the coming of the trustees of God amongst his servants, the daysprings of authority in his countries. So now let us explore the National Spiritual Assembly. Okay, His Holiness Abdul Baha provides a more explicit explanation of the houses of justice in his will and testament. And I hope every one of you goes back and rereads these charter documents, the will and testament of Abdul Baha, the book of the will of Baha'u'llah. It's also called the Kitaba Ad. In that one, these are charter documents, as well as the beloved guardian's dispensation of Baha'u'llah. Because as you know, that book really is his own, per se, his own will and testament, of his love to the administrative order. In that one, I have a full course. And if you, dear friends, persevere through Advent of Divine Justice, we could, per se, go into dispensation of Baha'u'llah in time, depending on what's going on with my little one emerging into the world too. So, so this is, Abdul Baha provides a more explicit explanation of the houses of justice in his will and testament. In addition, he introduces in his will and testament the secondary houses of justice and explicitly states in all countries, a secondary house of justice must be instituted. So this is in his will and testament. So we all reside in United States, and our body is the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. And this is the governing institution that oversees the affairs within the United States. Okay. And currently, it's not called an intermediary house of justice, it's called the National Spiritual Assembly. Yes, Don, did you have a hand? Oh, no hand. Okay, very good. So, dear friends, this, as you can see, the picture, that is the first members of the election of the Universal House of Justice there. So the birth and the primary stages in the erection of the framework of the administrative order of the faith, it signaled the first epoch of the formative age, starting with the ministry of the beloved guardian Shogh Effendi and completed in 1944 to 1946. It was a period, and I mentioned that it wasn't exactly clear when it was completed, but he said 1944 one time, 1946 another time. So that's why it's like that. The closing of the first century after the declaration of the Bab. So 1 century. So as you all know, 1944 was a historic year, centenary of the declaration of the Bab. And the beloved guardian, as you all recall, went to great lengths to write his only book that he ever wrote. And he only wrote one book. And does anyone know what book he wrote?
God Passes By.
Oh, Barry Seeming John, extras, bonus points right there. That was his only book he wrote, even though all the other are letters. And the one we're reading is a pretty long letter. Advent of Divine Justice. I would be happy to write even 10% of this. But he wrote this during the period on his leave from Palestine because of the Great Revolt, as you all recall. that was occurring in Palestine. And so this is 124 paragraphs a long letter. But his great masterpiece, God Passes By, was the book that he wrote in 1944. And he really, per se, killed himself to get that done because he wanted it to be a gift to the Baha'i world for the centenary of the Declaration of the Baha'i, 1944. Very important event. And I believe I've sent you a recording of Ruhi Khanum. And this is a recording of Ruhi Khanum in 1970. And she said that the beloved guardian really went to great lengths to get this book out. God Passes By. And he would always have Ruhi Khanum or one of his secretaries always with him when he was writing anything, whether it was God Passes By, whether he was writing Advent of Divine Justice, whether he was writing Promised Days Come, whether he was writing all his messages to the Antipodes or to his messages to Hawaii, in Arun, Hawaii, he always had someone there because he liked to dictate. So this is very important, dear friends. So when you are reading Advent of Divine Justice, read it out loud because it was designed to be read out loud. That's how he wrote it. And Ruhi Khanum says that if you do not read it out loud, you will miss a whole lot of things because it was designed to be read out loud. Then, last point is, actually, all the writings are meant to be read out loud because we read in our prayer book, recite the verses every morning, Eve, intone, the verses. Does that mean quietly or does it mean read out loud? So that's just my own anecdote on practice reading out loud. Okay, so the crowning institution of the framework, the Universal House of Justice, was elected 1963. And some of you, dear friends, are older than 1963 and remember this historic occasion when this great governing body came into being. Incredible. And so this was a first and will always be, historical time. Now, I've sent you the historical documents on this community, Kenosha, and the history of this community. And so they were the first spiritual assembly in the United States of America. And this is the second time you're seeing this picture of the first 18 believers in Kenosha. So the development of the Baha'i institutions in the United States started as early as 1899, when a council board of 7 officers administrating the North American continent was established in the city of Kenosha. Does anyone know which state Kenosha is in?
Wisconsin.
Yes.
Wisconsin.
Don gets 2 points. Very good. He was the first one to get it. 2 points.
He's faster unmuting, that's all.
Yeah, nice try, Pat. You might get a point. I'll give you partial credit there. Okay.
I've got the fastest finger in the West.
There you go, Don. So there we go. So Kenosha, Wisconsin. And does anyone remember which individual went to Kenosha and really started up this community? We talked about it a few sessions back.
Khairullah.
There you go, Dr. Bayat. I think you knew that from past, may not be from our past session. You already knew that one. But yes, Ibrahim Khairullah had visited Kenosha and conducted classes there. And so in the center, sitting right here, can you see my cursor or no? Give me a thumbs up if you can see my cursor moving.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. This is Byron Lane, first Baha'i in Kenosha. And so this individual helped bring in these, per se, the first 18 believers. That's kind of like the Letters of the Living of Kenosha. These are individuals that really set that community on fire, helped bring about, per se, the first administrative body within the United States was in Kenosha. So really great occurrence that happened there. In 1900, His Holiness Abdul Baha instructed a number of Baha'i teachers, Haji Abdullah Karim Tehrani, Haji Mirza Hassan Khorasani, and Mirza Asadullah and Mirza Abul Fazail, to travel to the United States to restore confidence of the community undermined by the defection of Ibrahim Khairullah. Now, this is his weapons against the disunity that was created by Khairullah. He was sending in his sharpshooters. These were the individuals of indefatigable, staunchness and faith and learning. Mirza Abu Fazil, the greatest Baha'i scholar, to come and to restore unity. So what happened? The consolidation work carried out by these travel teachers proved very effective. In a very short time, they succeeded in dispelling the doubts implanted in the hearts of the Baha'is by Khairullah, deepening their understanding of the fundamental verities of the faith, and giving an impulse to the formation of the nucleus of the Baha'i institutions. So these, per se, his weapons, that he sent to go back to America to vindicate and correct and restore the unity of the American believers, were victorious. And dear friends, I urge you to go and look at the lives of some of these friends that he sent. Abdullah Karim Tehrani, Haji Mirza Hassan Khorasani, Mirza Asadullah, and really Mirza Abul Fazail. He wrote Baha'i Proofs, and it's an incredible book that the beloved guardian actually urges all of us to study, and because it was a vindication of the truths of the faith, and it was written to an individual that was attacking the faith very harshly. And Abdul Baha turns to Mirza Abul Fazil and says, write a book to, prove the faith, and this scholar of the faith, Mirza Abul Fazil, writes this great book, the Baha'i Proofs, and it is it's a masterpiece, truly masterpiece. Any thoughts, questions at this point? Yes, no, moving on, we're good?
Wait 1 second, please.
Huh? Please.
I had forgotten exactly where Kenosha was, so I looked it up on the map.
Yes.
It's 50 or 60 miles north of Evanston,
yes,
and closer to Milwaukee.
Regionally, not too far. I mean, back in the days, they didn't have the forms of transportation we did. So, so these friends were moving around, and 50, 60 miles, 70 miles here or there, and that's how the faith was spreading. And it was
a good train ride.
Yes, there you go. And so that's how it started. And you can see the early Baha'is of New York City, 1900. So these are the early communities that were starting per se, the administrative body of the institution of New York Spiritual Assembly. This is the friends, and you can see Abdul Karim Tehrani there. And he was the one that, per se, helped to restore the unity after the defection of Ibrahim Khairullah. So he's come to really work to restore the unity there. Moving on. And here we go. Here's another picture, dear friends, of Thornton Chase. Does anyone know who Thornton Chase is? Oh, it says right there, first Baha'i in the West, right? So this is the first American believer. And urge you to read his life. The beloved guardian, as well as Abdul Baha, encourages us to read the life of Thornton Chase, and actually goes further and says that every American believer should visit his resting place once every year. It is per se a pilgrimage of the Baha'is of America to visit the resting place of Thornton Chase. It is, he has a station like none other. He is like the Babel America. He is the gate of all Americans entering into the fold of our country. He is the first.
Is there anybody in this group that's visited Thornton Chase's grave?
I know my dad has. I don't know.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And also I have asked a friend in Los Angeles area to do that on my behalf every year.
Yes. I don't know if you can do that, but that's that's a way of looking.
But I've been there twice. Yeah.
Yes, but this is, you know, as they say, and you know, a request, and it's the, you know, something that we're asked to do. So this is the friends seated. This is Mirza Abul Fazl is there, and he's seated next to Thornton Chase. There he is. There's Mirza Abul Fazl seated right there, and so these are the friends, and they have come to strengthen the community after this episode of what Khair Allah did to the community. Moving on. Okay, so Miss Deborah, you're up. Please, you have the floor.
Building of the framework. Consultative bodies were elected in Chicago, New York, and northern New Jersey between 1900 and 1904. A Baha'i Publishing Society was established in Chicago in 1902, and the Baha'i Bulletin was initiated in New York to disseminate the teachings of the faith. Another periodical, Baha'i News, appeared in Chicago on 21 March 1910, and a year later was renamed the Star of the West. This period also witnessed the emergence of many American travel teachers who traveled in the United States as well as Europe, the Far East, and the islands of the Pacific.
Excellent. Very well read, Ms. Deborah. So now that this emerging Baha'i community is starting to have publications, getting per se a formation of Baha'i identity forming. And so these periodicals are not only giving the friends news, it's also giving them writings. So they're creating that sense of readership as and deepening that is going on. So this is the Baha'i Council of the Baha'i Assembly of New York City, 1900. So the first one we saw was 1899, was Kenosha, Wisconsin. Now this is New York City. So here is the members of the Spiritual Assembly of New York, the first one, 1900. And you can see Clement Wilson, Howard McNutt, Arthur P. Dodge, Charles E. Sprague, Anton Haddad. Does anyone remember who Anton Haddad is? Bonus points.
Yes, he accompanied Khairullah, no?
That's right. But what's significant about Anton Haddad, Royajan? Any thoughts?
He translated some of the writings in the early days, and we still have those.
Oh, he was one of the two who came as first Baha'is to America.
Excellent, Miss Yuda, you're right, and you're correct, Dr. Bad too, but the bonus point answer, you're all right. The bonus point answer is he was the first, so he was the first Baha'i to come to America, was Anton Haddad, okay? And he also remained firm, as opposed to Khairullah, so.
Hey, Ihsan.
Yes, please, that's fine.
Is this the Star of the West is to be still written a letter from the Chicago to the Star of the West, or it's only in the past?
It was only in the past. But we have all the copies, and they're available online, so any of the friends can read them. I will send a link to Star of the West, Baha'i News, all of them. And it's a great, I urge you also in your spare time to read them, because to learn the history of our American Baha'i community. So I will send you the links in our ancillary readings, okay? But great question. Star of the West is no longer published.
Yeah, because many times I see quotations from Abdul Baha from the Star of the West, Star of the West. That's why I just wonder that still writing, or who is going to do that? That's why I just want to know.
Yes, but yeah, it's out of print. It's no longer being published. Star of the West. That's
Can I say something?
Yes, Dr. Satterbai, please.
It's interesting that there are 10 members in this council.
Yes.
Not 9, yeah.
That's correct.
He's putting Anton Haddad as honorary, so I wonder if that has to do with just honorary and not part of the elected body?
No, he actually was a member. He actually was a member, but he was considered an honorary member because of who he was, what he had done to by bringing the faith to America. But in that sense, also I understand. Later, obviously, I'll be reading. But it was also their understanding of the institutions, whereas in a nascent level. And so where it says in Kitab Aqdas that it didn't matter per se how, as long as it's 9, but over 9, it doesn't really matter. So here they had an honorary member to their.
And they're all men, of course, here.
Yes.
True, but it was also that point in time where women, this is in 1900, so women were of a lesser station. I will put it that way. It's all being recorded. I have to always be careful how I'm saying, talking, referencing. But yes, they were of a lesser station. Obviously, they're all white males. And so, yes, that's who was, we'll also be getting to that point where we'll see very notable African-Americans. And then we'll be seeing how they're operating in America too.
Yeah, and of course it was decades later when women were given even the right to vote in America. So this was probably the way things were done in those days.
Excellent. Very good point. Dr. Satterbai, you had another thought?
Also, I think they complained about this, the ladies, to Abdul Baha, and he advised them that they should be elected into these things. But it took a few years, you know.
Yes, excellent. Very good point. Thank you. Yes. So yes, it was a learning curve for the institutions in America to bring women into the spiritual assemblies. As you can see, that this is the first one of New York. It was completely male focused, and so later it was a learning curve to bring in female members into the spiritual assemblies. Very good. Okay, let's have someone else read this one. Miss Yuda Miller, go for it. Miss Yuda, you were muted. I'm not hearing the great voice.
The major works of Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha and various articles written by Eastern Baha'i scholars were translated, published, and disseminated between 1904 and 1908. Further consultative bodies were formed in Washington, Boston, and Spokane. During 1909 and 1911, various national initiatives emerged. The formation of the Baha'i Temple Unity, the publication of the Star of the West, and the commencement of the construction of the Baha'i Temple in Chicago.
Excellent. Wonderfully read, Ms. Yuda. So why am I highlighting all of these things? Is because these were mentioned in our paragraph 17, all the achievements, these major works, articles written. What other community have achieved, you know, these publications, had the foresight to have these publications? What other community would have had the publications? So this is, all of these are building of the institutions, building, and then the construction of a Baha'i temple. What other community have achieved something like this? So this is what the Baha'i Convention in Masonic Temple, Chicago, 1910. And this is Mr. Hollis presiding. So this is one of the very, very first pictures of a Baha'i convention that we have as a picture. So this is the beginnings of the early Baha'i community gatherings. This is 1911. This is Baha'i Temple Unity Convention, Chicago, Illinois. So now they're thinking, planning to have a Baha'i temple. 1910, so this is just a year before this. This is the delegates and friends at the Chicago Temple grounds. And they're assembled at the geometric center of the temple grounds. And they were invoking the greatest name as their faces are turned towards Akka. So you remember, dear friends, the devotion, the consecration of this community. They're all invoking Ya Baha'u'llah Pa as they are facing Akka. So this is why this country has the privilege of having a temple, such dedication, such consecration at this point, at this time. So what happens? His Holiness Abdul Baha decides to visit America, 1912. So the visit of Abdul Baha to the United States and Canada was for about 8 months, 239 days, and had a significant impact on the Baha'i community. It resulted in proclamation and growth of the Baha'i community. And so here's an article, newspaper clipping, it says 40 years in jail brings wisdom. Abdul Baha urges world peace. Famous Oriental philosopher will visit San Francisco to spread doctrine. So, all these newspaper clippings, I have actually a whole bunch of them. They're pretty interesting of how the travels of Abdul Baha throughout the United States.
I think it's better to send this newspaper to the world leaders.
Yes, thank you, Tesfai. So let's have another reader. Let's see who we got. Miss Beatrice, you're up. Go for it.
Building of the framework. In 1921, on assuming the guardianship, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi wrote to the American Baha'i community that every locality should elect a local spiritual assembly, and the Baha'i Temple unity should evolve into a national spiritual assembly. The American Baha'i community diligently followed the guidelines given by Shoghi Effendi. The evolution of the Baha'i Temple unity to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada was completed by 1925. There were 45 spiritual assemblies in the United States by April 1928, steadily increasing to 64 by 1936.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Beatrice. So, does anyone remember when Advent of Divine Justice was written?
December 25th, 1938.
Oh, there you go. That's my class. Good job, you guys. December 25th, 1938. So 1931, this is right on assuming the guardianship. One of the first things he did, remember, the words I would describe of the beloved, who the beloved guardian is in 2 words would be community builder. That's really what the beloved guardian embodied. So one of the first things he did was a community building enterprise. So he wanted to build the institutions of the local spiritual assemblies. And so he wrote a letter to the United States and the communities and said, you should elect a local spiritual assembly, and the Baha'i temple unity should eventually evolve into a national spiritual assembly. So this is what happened. It evolved into the first national spiritual assembly of the Baha'is in the United States and Canada. And as you all know, this letter was written to that august body of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada. And these are them. This is the individuals that this letter was actually received by. And so these are Montfort Mills was the chairman, Roy Wilhelm, vice chairman, Horace Hawley. These people, you should look at their lives and research Horace Hawley. These people are stellar. Florence Morton, the treasurer. Amelia Collins. Does anyone know who Amelia Collins is? She became a hand of the cause of God. Ali Kuli Khan, Siegfried Schopflocker, and Alan McDaniel, and Carl Scheffler. These Amelia Collins and Siegfried Schopflocker, these two are we're going to talk about them, I believe, in this part, but these two are the individuals that are known for financing and building of the house of worship, the house of worship in Wilmette. So these are really the two proponents of making it a reality. Okay, I'll read this one. In paragraph 17, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi refers to the Baha'i house of worship in Wilmette, Chicago by asking, what other community has proved itself be fired by so noble a vision or willing to rise to such heights of self-sacrifice or ready to achieve so great a measure of solidarity as to be able to raise in so short a time, in the course of such crucial years, an edifice that can well deserve to be regarded as the greatest contribution ever made by the West to the cause of Baha'u'llah. And here we see 4 sides of the gallery section were completed by October 1st, 1938. And as you recall from our, I believe it was our second part when we're talking about the goals of the 7-year plan, the first 7-year plan. The Shoghi Effendi says one of the goals of the first 7-year plan was exterior ornamentation of the house of worship. Here you can see this is as you correctly said, December 25th, 1938. This was written. So one of the goals that was in the first 7-year plan was exterior ornamentation, and all the goals of the first 7-year plan were achieved 1944. So in 1902, the governing board of the Baha'is of Chicago, known as the House of Spirituality, asked Abdul Baha for permission to build a house of worship in Chicago. This is 1902. As you all know, Abdul Baha is still around. He's with us till 1921. So Abdul Baha responded by granting permission for the construction of the Baha'i house of worship in a tablet dated the 7th of June, 1903. So 7th June, 1903, he says, yes, please proceed. Let's build this temple. And this is the tablet. Here it is. Abdul Baha writes, O ye who are attracted, O ye who are firm, O ye who are zealous in the service of the cause of God and are sacrificers of possessions and lives for the promotion of the word of God. I perused your recent letter, and my heart was filled with joy through its beautifying meanings and its eloquent contents. Truly they were suggested by the breaths of confirmation from the glorious Lord. O friends of Abdul Baha and his co-sharers and partners in the servitude of the Lord of hosts, verily the greatest affair and the most important matter today is to establish a matchless star and to found a temple from which the voice of praisings may rise to the kingdom of the majestic Lord, Blessings be upon you for having thought to do so and intending to erect such an edifice, advancing all in devoting your wealth in this great purpose and in this splendid work. You will soon see the angels of confirmation following after you, and the hosts of reinforcement crowding before you. When the Mashal Asghar is accomplished, when the lights are emanating therefrom, the righteous ones are presenting themselves therein. The prayers are performed with supplication towards the mysterious kingdom of heaven. The voice of glorification is raised to the Lord, the Supreme. Then the believers shall rejoice, the hearts shall be dilated and overflow with the love of the all-living and self-existent God. The people shall hasten to worship in that heavenly temple. The fragrances of God will be elevated. The divine teachings will be established in the hearts, like the establishment of the Spirit in mankind. The people will then stand firm in the cause of your Lord, the merciful. Praise and greetings be upon you. So there you are, dear friends. The first letter of Abdul-Baha to this Board of Baha'is of Chicago. And this tablet was dated 7th June 1903, giving his permission, his blessing on having a Mashal Asghar in Chicago. And the reference is here, dear friends, Tablets of Abdul-Baha, Volume 1, page 16. So what happened? Abdul-Baha provided constant guidance on the design and architectural form of the temple through various tablets that he wrote to the American Baha'i community, as well as counsels he gave to the American pilgrims who visited him in the Holy Land. And in 1907, His Holiness Abdul-Baha highlighted the significance and importance of building the Mashal Asghar in Chicago, and described how it would contribute to the unity and prosperity of the cause. And these messages resulted in a new surge of activity and increased contributions by assemblies and individuals. So the community had something to rally around. It was a unifying force, as well as the Mashal Asghar is the silent teacher. So the creation of this house of worship, this Mashal Asghar, the dawning point of God, is the silent teacher. So the creation of this rallied the whole American Baha'i community together. So let us have another reader. Let's hear from you. Yes, testify. You have the.
Yeah, is Chicago temple is to be the first house of worship, or the Kazakhstan, or something that last time we learned? Is that to be the oldest, or this one is the oldest?
Great question, Tesfaya. Any question is a good question. So the first temple was in Ishqabad, okay? And
Ishqabad, yeah.
Yes, we learned about that temple, and we learned about the history and how that community flourished, and then how it also came, per se, crumbling down by an earthquake, and eventually was completely razed, and now it's a park. So we learned about that temple. This is the second Baha'i temple in the world, the second.
All right.
But it is also the mother temple of the West. So this, and also the only Baha'i house of worship that Abdul-Baha actually visited. So he didn't visit the one in Ishqabad. So he visited this one per se and laid the cornerstone. So this is also has a major historic significance.
That's why I ask you, because Abdul-Baha is present over here, and why not present over there? Now you got me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tesfai. So let us hear from Miss Mary McGregor. You have the floor.
Construction of the Baha'i House of Worship. The House of Spirituality of Chicago invited representatives from various cities to attend a meeting on 27 November 1907 to consult on the project. A committee of 9 people was appointed by the convention to coordinate and oversee the work of the temple. On 9 April 1908, the first 2 building lots for the temple were purchased. On 19 June, Abdu'l-Baha lovingly directed the Baha'is in Chicago to hold another national convention for the temple, with 1 representative selected from each community around the country. This convention was held on 22nd, 23rd March, 1909 in Chicago, and the proceedings opened with the reading of a tablet received from Abdu'l-Baha. The convention created a Baha'i Temple Unity Committee to undertake the work of the construction of the temple and other Baha'i activities of national importance until the formation of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada.
Awesome. Very well read, Miss Mary. On May 1st, 1912, Abdu'l-Baha visited the temple site and personally laid the cornerstone of the building. The purchase of temple land was completed in 1914 with contributions received from both within the United States and abroad. The architectural design of the temple, developed by Louis J. Bourgeois, was presented to the convention held in New York in 1920 as a large plaster model. The construction of a caisson foundations began 17th December 1920 with a contract given to Mr. Avery Brundage. And this is a picture. I try not to have pictures of His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha throughout my presentations as out of sacredness of Abdu'l-Baha. So this is just one, and it was for the purpose of showing the occasion. And this is when Abdu'l-Baha declared the temple is already built, which is an incredible statement, incredible. He's already said it's done. So this is Nowruz, March 21st, 1909. What a celebration of Nowruz, that now they have now got a Baha'i Temple Unity Convention. So really Nowruz was per se the bringing about of National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada's beginning committee. That's the committee that formed into the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada was Nowruz 1909. This is the convention right here. These are per se the descendants of many of the great American Baha'is today. So on Tuesday, April 27th, in the afternoon session of the convention, the design for the matchless scar at Wilmette, Illinois was finally chosen by the 49 delegates present. As you recall, there were all these delegates sent by all the communities. So the designs were submitted by 3 architects, Louis Bourgeois, William Sutherland Maxwell, and Charles Mason Reamy. And Louis Bourgeois' design was chosen by a majority vote of the delegates. Upon Reamy's proposal, the decision to adopt Bourgeois' plan was made unanimous. So the decision was unanimous. The work of boring the ground for the foundation of the building was started on September 24th, 1920. And there he is. This is Louis J. Bourgeois, the architect of the House of Worship in Chicago, the Mother Temple of the West. So this was his design. Look at it. This is the original model of the temple developed by Louis J. Bourgeois. Does it look like the current House of Worship? Not exactly, not exactly, kind of, right, Miss Mary McGregor? Kind of, but not exactly. So this was his proposal. The 12th annual Baha'i convention was made memorable by the choice of a design for a great Mashrak al-Alaskar. That's the Mashalaskar, or place of worship, which will be erected in Chicago. The model selected was constructed by Louis Bourgeois of New York. It is a building of 9 sides topped with a transparent dome. And this came from This Week in History as reported by the Summit County Journal, the week of May 29, 1920. So this is a newspaper clipping I found where they announced the announcement of that Louis J. Bourgeois, per se, was the architect that had been selected, and this is his design. So, so the executive board of the Baha'i Temple Unity Committee decided to seek the guidance of Abdul-Baha on its design. So Mr. Bourgeois prepared some drawings of the design, and in the middle of January 1921, he sailed to the Holy Land to personally share the design with Abdul-Baha. So these are some of his designs. I bet you've never seen that one, right? So this is Mr. Louis J. Bourgeois' drawing of the house of worship. So this is what he wanted the house of worship to look like. Doesn't look exactly like that, does it? And so this is some of the side panelings, the drawing of one of the side entrances. So what happened? After seeing the design, His Holiness Abdul-Baha indicated to Corinne True in a tablet that the design was too large and costly for such a small community. So accordingly, Mr. Bourgeois had to modify the plan, and the construction of the temple commenced. In 1925, Shoghi Effendi advised the American Baha'i community not to start the next stage of the project until they had accumulated $400,000. The superstructure of the temple was completed and handed over at the opening of the convention in 1931. And Shoghi Effendi set the completion of the exterior of the temple as one of the goals of the North American Baha'i community's first 7-year plan that started in 1937. As you all recall, that was one of the goals of exterior ornamentation. So as you can see, this is a picture of the house of worship, and there is no exterior ornamentation in this picture because they're going to start working on the ornate pre-cast concrete panels, and that's how they're hung one after another. Alabaster concrete panels. So here's the picture. This is the first picture taken in the Chicago Temple steps after the completion of the superstructure, 1931. So this was a great historic achievement. 1927 was the 7-year plan started, but they completed the superstructure 1931. So there's all celebrating and looking quite happy. And in this picture, Miss Corinne True is in it, and it's in the top left. I have a better picture of that. She's actually circled. This is Miss Corinne True. You see the circle around her? It's a very faint circle. That's Miss Corinne True. So she's right there in the picture. Okay. I have another entire section on her, and so we'll be talking about much greater in detail. So this is the Baha'i booth in Communications Building of the 1939 New York, I don't know what it's trying to move on me. Hold up. New York World's Fair. And there's the model of it. And this is the Baha'i booth in Communications Building in 1939, New York World's Fair. So big celebration, announcement of this house of worship going to be built. Now, here's the revised drawing. Remember, Abdul-Baha said that was too big, too grand, too expensive, so he had to revise it. So this is the matchless, the first Baha'i house of worship in America. When completed, its foundation is already laid at Wilmette, Illinois, and a suburb of Chicago. Mr. Louis Bourgeois, the architect. And you can see his signature down in the bottom, Louis Bourgeois, architect, Mashraqul Azkar. So that was his revised drawing. And this is his revised plaster model of the temple developed by Louis J. Bourgeois. So he had to revise everything as requested by Abdul Baha. Here's beautiful picture, Amatul Bahari Khanum, posing with the model of the Chicago Baha'i Temple. And this is another picture, temple model on exhibit, Illinois State Fair, 1939. And last, we're almost at closing, 8:26. We'll share with you the dedication of the Mother Temple. So I don't know if you have actually seen this, but this is actually a beautiful gift I'm going to share with you before we close.
That's beautiful. So I have a question for you.
Tesfaye, on closing, let's just watch this and then we'll come back to you. This is a short video on the Tesfaye. So please mute yourself and then we'll come back to you. Thank you.
During his visit to America in 1912, Abdul-Baha laid with his own hands the cornerstone of the first Baha'i house of worship in the West at Wilmette, Illinois. After more than 40 years, through the selfless and sacrificial efforts of the Baha'i Friends, the house of worship was completed. Among those honored and later elevated to the rank of Hand of the Cause for their contributions was Siegfried Schopflocher. In addition to his devoted services, he pledged major sums to the building works, which during the Great Depression constituted very significant amounts. The Guardian referred to him as the chief temple builder. Corinne True, another Hand of the Cause-to-be, championed the temple project. Following a petition to Abdul-Baha to raise funds for building of the House of Worship in America, the master consented and charged Corinne with the responsibility to raise it. It was her tireless and selfless devotion over the next 50 years, in the face of many difficulties, that finally saw the completion of the Mother Temple West. She and hundreds of other friends were to witness the official opening. A future Hand of the Cause, Mr. Paul Haney, introduces Amatul Baha, Ruhiyya Khanum.
Shoghi Effendi Rabbani, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, has sent his wife, Amatul Baha Ruhiyya Khanum, as his personal representative to present a message of dedication from him as the world leader of the Baha'i faith.
On behalf of the guardian of the faith of Baha'u'llah, I have the great honor of dedicating this first Mashraqul Azkar of the Western world to public worship. Initiated 50 years ago, its foundation stone laid by Abdul-Baha, the son of the founder of the faith, raised by contributions from its followers all over the world, reared in the vicinity of the first Baha'i center established in the West. This house of worship, now opening wide its doors to peoples of all creeds, of all races, of all nations, and of all classes, is dedicated to three fundamental verities animating and underlying the Baha'i faith: the unity of God, the unity of his prophets, the unity of mankind. I greet and welcome you on behalf of the guardian of our faith within these walls, and invite you to share with us the words recorded in the sacred scriptures, which we believe to be the repositories of the eternal and fundamental truths revealed by God in various ages. ages for the guidance and salvation of all mankind.
The program approved by the Guardian included as readers a number of hands of the cause who'd been appointed in 1951 and 1952.
الحمد لله الذي أنزل الكتاب على عبده بالحق ليكون للعالمين سراجا وهاجا.
Mr. Khadem's chanting from the Ayun al-Asma, the Bard's commentary on the Surah of Joseph, had been foreshadowed by the Guardian years earlier, when Mr. Khadem was on pilgrimage.
من أتوا ذكر الله فكتابه هوزا فقد أتوا الله.
Mr. Furatan, a member of the First National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Iran, on which he was to serve on successive occasions as secretary.
حبا لله ولعباده بر این امر عظیم خطیر قیام نمایی.
Mr. Samandari had the unique honor amongst the existing hands of the cause of having attained the presence of Baha'u'llah.
امید کرمت زنده اند دست قدرت از جیب قوت برآر و این نفوس در گل مانده را نجات ده.
All right. So,
thank you so much for sharing. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
so
you.
we'll pause for there tonight, and we'll
Thank
pick
you.
up next week in our session. So, hope you enjoyed that treat.
Yes, very much.
Beautiful.
So let's have a closing prayer, and then we'll end for tonight. We're at 8:37.
Yeah.
So, who would like to share a prayer with us before we close?
Would you like for me to chant one?
I would love for anyone. Please, love it. Thank you.
والله ای پروردگار این جمع را شمع روشن فرما و نفوس را تایید کن رویها را نورانی نما و خویها را گلشن فرما جانها را به نفسات قدس زنده کن و نفوس را به هدایت کبرا نفیس فرما بخشش آسمانی مبذول کن و موهبت رحمانی شایان فرما و در کهف حفظ و حمایت خویش محفوظ و مسون دار الطاف بی پایان شایان کن و عنایات مخصوص کامل فرما تویی دهنده و بخشنده و دانا